Sure. Oh, it was okay. I was trying to figure out where the partnership committee
The
came in,
partnership committee doesn't need to come into it at
which
all.
is what I wanted to make sure in the motion it was to go to.
No, that can come.
Are we?
I don't know, simply.
Council member makes a good point. I think what we would do is if there's council consensus to move this forward, we would bring it forward in a resolution at your subsequent meeting.
Oh, okay.
The next.
So it would not be
In effect.
in effect today, but
Or even next meeting, because you'll adopt it and then it will come into effect the following meeting.
you would
Yeah,
adopt the
about a month.
resolution.
Yeah, 30 days.
I think everyone's
So-
comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, well, I think it's important to keep in mind the rarity of having so many people speak to one agenda item at a time. And I've noticed that it's normally only occurred when the agenda item is something a lot of people are really passionate about. And so I know that at 10 people, at 3 minutes each, you're at 30 minutes. And then so you're trying to reduce it as much as possible by going down to 20 and then at going down to 2 minutes and then going down to 1.5. I get that. It doesn't seem to me though that it's such a big issue that we would need to initiate this type of change ourselves as a council. I'm interested in this being placed on the agenda because it would be great to see if the community residents actually want that type of change, so that I could ideally be in a situation where I'm just being responsive to that community ask. And so far, since it hasn't been on the agenda, there hasn't been that real opportunity to see if it's favorable amongst the community.
So can we put a resolution on the agenda and then provide
We
them
should probably
time?
do that.
A
They can
re-
have public comment
a
prior to the
resolution.
vote,
Yeah,
I think
a
that's-
resolution does go on the agenda.
right? So that would
Okay. So
provide that
that-
opportunity.
Yep.
Right. Any other comment?
The motion, may you
A
make
motion.
the motion again, by the clerk?
Sure. The motion is to adopt the current recommendations as read.
Okay.
So we're adopting the language that was read to us instead of putting something on the agenda.
The motion could be amended
Consideration.
just to say, move to bring forward a resolution with the recommendations as read.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to adopt or amend my
Okay.
motion, and that is to bring forth a resolution to next council meeting.
All those in favor of that amendment, say aye.
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 All right, thank you.
Thank you.
If you'd like to read the amended motion,
Sure. Bring forward a resolution to the next meeting with the recommendations as read.
thank you. I think we're ready for roll call now.
Coffee?
Yes.
Cousins?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Funk?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is a proclamation for Yakima Bikes and Walks. Eric Holman, would you, you're here to accept? And Councilmember White will be, we have more than
Wow.
just you.
My crew.
Good.
We're not gonna all speak.
All right, Councilmember White, if you would like to read the
All right, thank you
proclamation.
guys. All right, the City of Yakima proclamation, whereas creating a bicycle and pedestrian-friendly community has been shown to improve citizens' health, well-being, and quality of life, growing the economy of Yakima by attracting tourism dollars, improving traffic safety, improving student learning outcomes, and reducing pollution, congestion, and wear and tear on our streets and our roads. And whereas state and local governments and school districts encourage and promote healthy and active lifestyles for students and residents, and whereas a lack of physical activity plays a leading role in rising rates of obesity and diabetes and other health problems, and being able to walk or ride a bike to school offers an opportunity to build activity in students' daily routines. And whereas Yakima Bikes and Walks and other civic groups here and around the nation will be promoting bicycling and walking during the month of May 2019. And whereas now I therefore, Jason White, on behalf of Mayor Caffey Coffee and on behalf of the Yakima City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2019 as Bike and Walk to Work and School Month.
Thank you.
And on behalf of Yakima Bikes and Walks and my colleagues, we would like to thank the City Council and the Mayor for making the proclamation. And we do hope that this is a small step toward a better community. And I'd like everyone to have some fun. And everyone here is into the competition. If you saw my letter to the editor, your department, school, or business can earn a trophy showing your support, your spirit of the month, if you so desire.
Thank you. Please come down and shake our hand, and we want to thank you. It's also nice that we have reinstated the Bike and Ped Committee.
See my scrub. Is there hand sanitizer available? I want hand sanitizer.
Be safe out there.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Hey, how are you doing?
Hi, it's really nice to see you. Good to see you. How are you?
I know.
Next on the agenda is the proclamation for the Missing Persons Awareness Month. Michelle Joe will accept, and Councilmember Brad Hill will read the proclamation. Michelle? Apparently she's not here, but if you'd go ahead and read the proclamation, please.
Whereas every missing person is someone's child, they could be someone's brother or sister, husband or wife, father or mother, and more than likely, they are someone's friend. And whereas there are currently 19 missing persons and 2 unidentified persons from Yakima County entered into the NAMIS system, 8 of the missing persons are from right here in our city. 7 out of the 8 of these are now cold cases. And whereas the missing have family and friends that love them and miss them and continue to search for them no matter how long they've been missing, and their lives are in limbo because they don't know if their loved one is alive or dead. They don't know if they should continue to hope or if they should begin to grieve. They want their missing loved one found. And whereas if you are concerned for someone's safety and welfare and do not know their whereabouts, you should file a missing persons report with law enforcement. There is no waiting period. And whereas law enforcement should take all missing person cases seriously and they should investigate them as a possible homicide from the moment a missing report is filed, because the first 48 hours are the most crucial for collecting evidence that can solve a case. And whereas the chances of solving a case after the first 48 hours decreases drastically, so it's better to investigate and not need the information than wait for a month or more to decide that it's needed and no evidence is left. And whereas every missing person is a human being that deserves to be looked for regardless of their age, gender, or nationality, now therefore, I, Kathy Coffey, Mayor of the City of Yakima, and on behalf of the Yakima City Council, do hereby proclaim May 2019 as Missing Persons Awareness Month in the City of Yakima, and ask all people to join me in this special observance.
Thank you. I saw some activity in the lobby. Is Michelle perhaps out there now, or anyone that is representing her? If not, we all understand the importance of this proclamation. Thank you so much for reading it. Next, we have on the agenda proclamation for Mental Health Awareness Month. Hector Leo, if you'd like to come forward to the podium, and Councilmember Funk, if you would read the proclamation once Mr. Leo is at the podium.
Whereas mental health is essential to everyone's health and well-being, and whereas approximately 1/2 of chronic mental illnesses begin at age 14, 3/4 by age 24, and 1 in 5 adults experience a mental health problem in any given year. And whereas suicide is the leading cause of death in the United States and the second leading cause among young adults, it's actually not the leading cause of death. 90% of people who die by suicide have an underlying mental illness, and whereas long delays, sometimes decades, often occur between the time symptoms first appear and when individuals get help, and whereas early identification and treatment can make a difference in successful management of mental illness and recovery, and whereas it is important to maintain mental health and learn the symptoms of mental illness in order to get help when it is needed, and whereas every citizen and community can make a difference in helping end the silence and stigma that for too long have surrounded mental illness and discouraged people from getting help, and whereas public education and civic activities can encourage mental health and help improve the lives of individuals and families affected by mental illness. Now, therefore, Kathy Coffey, the mayor, and the Yakima City Council hereby proclaim May 19th as Mental Health Month in the city of Yakima to shine a light on mental illness and fight stigma, provide support, educate the public, advocate for equal care, and be it further resolved that all citizens, businesses, schools, and community organizations are encouraged to take the stigma-free pledge at National Association of Mental Health website in observance of Mental Health Month.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I am here on behalf of the Yakima chapter of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and we want to thank the council for this proclamation and for helping to raise awareness of the tremendous impact that mental illness has on our families here in our community and throughout the Yakima Valley, and also raising awareness as to the barriers that exist in seeking help and in seeking treatment in the form of the stigma that is associated with mental illness. So Yakima NAMI offers resources and programs to help not only the people who are affected by mental illness, but their loved ones and family members that surround them. I also want to encourage everybody to turn out to our NAMI Walk fundraiser at Franklin Park this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 3 in the afternoon. There'll be refreshments, and we're there to raise funds for the organization. So once again, thank you very much for the proclamation. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate you. We'd like to shake your hand.
Absolutely. I'd like to shake yours too.
All right.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And that's
Thank you,
Saturday?
Mayor. Saturday at 10
All right.
in the morning at
Mr.
Franklin
Leah,
Park.
thank you for your work on
Ms.
this.
McGee. I appreciate it.
Hey,
Council,
good to see you.
appreciate it. Ms. Cousins, thank you very much.
It's valuable work.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Next is a proclamation for Older Americans Month. Sheila Brogdon. Sheila, if you'd come to the podium, Councilmember Cousins will be reading the proclamation for you.
Thanks, Sheila.
Hi.
Whereas the city of Yakima includes a growing number of older Americans who enrich our community through their diverse life experiences. And whereas the city of Yakima is committed to strengthening our community by connecting and supporting older adults, their families, and caregivers, and acknowledging their many valuable contributions to society. And whereas the city of Yakima recognizes the importance of bringing together all generations and engaging in activities that promote physical, mental, and emotional well-being for the benefit of all. And whereas the city of Yakima can enhance the lives of older Americans in our community by promoting home and community-based services that support independent living, involving older adults in community planning, events, and other activities, providing opportunities for older adults to work, volunteer, learn, lead, and mentor. Now, therefore, I, Holly Cousins, on behalf of Mayor Coffey and the rest of the City Council, do hereby proclaim May 2019 to be Older Americans Month. And urge every resident to take time during this month to recognize our older adults and the people who serve them as essential and valuable members who greatly contribute to our community. Dated the 7th day of May, 2019.
Thank you.
If I could, I'd like to add just a little bit of anecdote. Each year, older adults are making a positive impact by taking part in activities that promote wellness and social connection, sharing their wisdom and experience with future generations, and enriching their communities. They are volunteers, employees, employers, educators, mentors, and advocates. Older Americans Month provides resources to help older Americans stay healthy, independent, and provide resources to help communities support and celebrate their diversity. This year's Older Americans theme is Connect, Create, Contribute. Emphasizes the importance of connecting with friends, family, local services, resources, creating through activities that promote learning, health, personal achievement, contributing time, talent, life to experience benefits to others. Southeast Washington Aging and Long-Term Care will celebrate Older Americans Month by promoting ways that community members of all ages can take part in helping with the older adult population thrive not only during the month of May, but throughout the year. Communities that support and recognize their older adults are stronger. So thank you, Mayor Coffey, and the rest of the City Council for proclaiming May as Older Americans Month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please come and join us. We'd like to congratulate you.
I'm there too. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me give you this.
Oh, yes. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Next on the good of the order is a welcome for our new police chief, Matt Murray. City Manager Moore will make the introduction.
Thank you, Mayor Chief. If you'll stand to the podium. Council, it's my pleasure and my honor to introduce Mr. Matthew Murray as Yakima's new police chief. Matt was sworn in last Wednesday morning, so he's been on the job for less than a week, but it's been a very busy week. He's been out and meeting people. He's been working with the Yakima Police Department staff, getting situated. Last Sunday, Matt and I were at the Cinco de Mayo celebration, and we had an opportunity to introduce him to the crowd there. And afterwards, I think 50 young people came up and had a photograph with the chief, making friends, and starting his time in Yakima in a really very positive way. Matt comes to Yakima after a 28-year career, an outstanding career at the Denver Police Department, where he served in many roles over the years, including a patrol officer, a homicide detective, a major crimes lead, and internal affairs investigator. Matt has a Bachelor of Science degree in management and a Master of Science degree in organizational leadership. He was described by his colleagues in the Denver Police Department as a person of character and integrity, respected at all levels of the department, and a person who listens and respects the views of others. He was called a true visionary in 21st century policing, which is one of the council's adopted strategic priorities. Matt will be joined here in Yakima by his wife, Marcy Murray, who's here tonight. Marcy's a school teacher, and so she's not going to be here permanently until, I think, next month while she's finishing the school year. But tonight, Marcy and also their granddaughter, Anaya, are here for this formal introduction to the community. I'm happy to say that over the last month or so, I've gotten to know Matt really well. I've had the good fortune of getting to know Matt really well, and I couldn't be more impressed with his knowledge and his willingness to roll up his sleeves, his can-do attitude, and his vision for the Yakima Police Department. Council, Matt Murray will be a police chief that we will all be proud of. So council and to our community, please welcome Chief Matt Murray.
So I will be extremely brief, especially in mind of the new limits. Just joking. But I wanted to say thank you to everybody. One of the things that I had said over and over and over was we wanted to come to a community that was very welcoming, and we have felt that welcome. And the other was that my granddaughter and my daughter live in Tacoma. So this gives us a chance to be near somebody pretty dear to our heart. They couldn't be here at the ceremony, so Marcy flew in from Denver today, and Anaya came in to be here for this. So we just wanted to introduce you to my family and to thank everybody in the community. So, should we?
Welcome, Chief.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is another pleasant duty. It is to presentation by the Washington Department of Health and of the commit.
Missed one. Item 2.
She's gone.
Yeah.
She is not here,
She's
so
not
we
present.
are moving on.
Oh, good to know.
Next on the agenda, again, is a presentation by the Washington Department of Health of the Commitment to Excellence Award to David Brown, Water and Irrigation Division Manager, Department of Health Eastern Regional Manager, Dorothy Tibbetts, and Andy Cervantes, Regional Engineer, will be presenting. Well, that was a mouthful.
All right, Dave.
But Dave,
Yeah.
good job.
Yes.
Oh, and
Oh,
it's
look at
pretty
that.
too.
Wow.
Wow.
I will put this.
Let's see.
Hold
You've
on.
got a lot of people that want to congratulate you. Dave, why don't you move forward, and those of you that can come in behind you, we don't want to block the aisle. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me all right? I'm going to go ahead and say a few words. My name is Dorothy Tibbetts. I'm the Regional Manager for the Washington Department of Health Office of Drinking Water. I'm with the Eastern Regional Office. I want to introduce Andy Cervantes. He's the Regional Engineer for Yakima County. I also want to find out if there are folks here from the Yakima County Health Department. Anyone from Holly's team? We're going to mention the health department in a few moments. Thank you for joining me today to recognize Dave Brown, Assistant Public Works Director. Every year, the first full week in May is Drinking Water Week. The Office of Drinking Water takes this time to recognize not only water systems and operators, but also other public entities and individuals who are essential in ensuring our citizens have safe, reliable drinking water. As all of us here today know, successful public health outcomes rely on effective cooperation and partnerships among various regulatory and other public entities. There's no better example of this than David Brown. He has the distinction of being nominated by his staff as well as Andy Cervantes, our Office of Drinking Water Regional Engineer for Yakima County. David began his career as the water treatment plant supervisor and worked his way up to his present position as assistant director. His own department crews nominated David to recognize him for his life's work in the field of drinking water. David chairs the Yakima Basin Integrated Plan Water Use Committee and is a board member of a local irrigation canal company, chair of Washington Warren, an emergency response cooperative organization. He is a member of the local conservancy board, and he is involved with the Bureau of Reclamation. He also teaches certification training, helps his staff advance and achieve personal goals, and provides calm, reliable leadership in times of crisis. Well, one time in particular, we had a crisis this past year, and we're also recognizing Dave not only for his life's work in drinking water, but as well for helping water systems in need. Last year, 2 small water systems in the Fruitvale area needed help. Both were struggling with a bacteriological contamination issue after detection of E. coli in their distribution systems. Wells in the area tend to be older and relatively shallow, making them susceptible to contamination from nearby septic tanks and drain fields. This is a clear public health issue, and this is where I want to recognize Yakima County Health Department as well for their quick action in initiating an investigation by doing outreach to private well owners and offering sampling services. They tracked sample results and reported them to involved agencies, and they provided daily communications to help the entire public health system step into action if needed. Dave also sprang into action. He worked through various logistical and funding challenges in order to find a safe and reliable source of drinking water for more than 200 people affected by the contamination. David continues to prioritize efforts and improve the safety and reliability of the drinking water in the Fruitvale area, along with other sections of the city where water quality is at risk due to vulnerable conditions. Please join me in congratulating Dave Brown for his outstanding leadership in providing safe and reliable drinking water to the citizens of Yakima.
Well, one minor correction, I chair the Municipal Water Use Committee for the Integrated Plan. Scott Ravel does that chair. Okay. I want to thank my team, Dorothy and Andy, at the Department of Health for my commitment, recognizing my commitment to drinking water. Hope I can get through this. I'm kind of a blubbering fool. This is the word to all of us at Water Irrigation. We're a real team. And a special thanks to Brenda. She started this drafting thing to get me nominated and then passed it through several other people. I started in the water and wastewater business in 1972, some 47 years ago, at Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas, where I went to school. I worked in water and wastewater at Randolph Air Force Base in Texas, Lodges Field in the Azores, Portugal, Malmstrom Air Force Base, Great Falls, Montana, and Fort Benton, Montana. And I've been here for 35 years. Well, I've been at this a long time. I could not be successful here at Yakima without a dedicated team. we say it takes a village to do lots of things in our life, and it takes a village to make the water system work. So we have Emilio Lopez. He heads up our distribution team and his technicians and operators. Jeff Bond, who runs the water plant, and his team of operators. Mike Shane, who runs our development process, capital improvements, utility locates, and our store. And Maria Martinez runs that store. While not in the drinking water side of our business, what we do here, Rich Santaslow and the Gators are a major part of our success. Leadership also plays a role in what we do, and Scott Schaefer and Cliff Moore provide that leadership. Also, most important, I could not be successful without the support of my bride.
Yay, David.
Let him finish.
Sorry. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you for your many years of wonderful service.
Thanks for all of you.
Sorry.
Congrats, Dave.
Thank you, everyone. That was very special.
Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah.
Okay, was there something you wanted to add?
Yes, I wanted to say that I had a really fun time touring the water treatment plant and was very excited to see that they were producing their own chlorine from electrolysis. There's an old country song that says, "You don't miss your water till your well runs dry." And we tend to take our excellent water for granted, and it's great that we are taking a moment to recognize the expertise that keeps it running. For those of you who think that we can only drink water from plastic bottles, in Yakima you can drink the tap water, and we should. And I hope that we will have a lot of recognition of this award on our public media sites.
Thank you. Next is the Gang Reduction Task Force update by Senior Assistant City Attorney Sarah Watkins and Consultant Matt Fairbanks.
Well, that's a hard act to follow.
It is.
Okay, so
But I'm sure you're up to the task.
Gangs are at least as exciting as water. You can.
You don't think so? I've seen Dave at some of those meetings that they mentioned back when I worked in private practice. And he is an excellent representative of the city of Yakima.
Yes, and has been for all of those 35 years.
Yeah. So I'm here for the third quarter update for the Gang Reduction and Intervention Task Force. I provided the PowerPoint in your packet, so I'm not going to go over it word for word. I'm going to give you a real quick overview. As you know, we were provided $150,000 from the governor's office to develop a sustainable response to gang activity and youth violence. It has three main elements: the village, which provides the capacity building and the sharing of resources and getting together service providers, the school district, municipal government entities, and other interested parties. The health promoter, who provides education to parents and youth through radio interviews on KDNA, and we also have radio interviews and ads on Town Square Media. The KDNA ones are focused more on adult information, and the Town Square Media focus both on adult and youth information. And then the third prong is the intervention specialist, who works directly to provide youth coaching, skills, and referrals to services. And all of that is overseen by the steering committee with help of the coordinator, Matt Fairbank. So the steering committee has been meeting monthly. We had a meeting before this meeting. They recently passed bylaws and charter, which is important for long-term sustainability of the program. And one of the things that they did when doing that was added 2 seats to the steering committee of additional interested parties. One is a member of the Yakima Police Department, to be determined by the police chief, and the other will be, when it is filled, someone who is formerly gang involved in one way or another. That could mean a lot of things. And that seat will be filled by the city council when we have a qualified applicant. So as you know, the village meets every 2 months. It is the stakeholder coalition, and its meetings agendas are determined by coalition interest areas. It's a very organic process. Stakeholders are asked what they want to learn more about, and then we provide them that information. So it is from the ground up type organization, so that the coordinator and I aren't deciding what's going on that agenda. It's really decided by the people who are interested parties at that meeting. We also are including networking amongst the attendees. That was something that in a recent survey they indicated they wanted more of. We're being receptive to all of their requests, because this is really a meeting for them. And we are doing a number of different surveys with regards to the stakeholders at the village meetings about the meetings themselves. And we're going to be doing surveys about capacity, so who has available facilities, who has available volunteers, to try to even further build the capacity within Yakima to provide youth programming and keep kids out of gangs. The next meeting is May 29th from noon to 2 at Comprehensive Healthcare, if you're interested in attending. So the prevention strategy I already talked about. Those are the radio spots. And we have been providing information on adverse childhood experiences. We've been providing information on different organizations in the community that have summer programming or school programming. It's a diverse set of subject areas, and I'm happy to get you a full list of those if that's something that you would like in the future. And then we have the Yakima Youth Leadership Program. It is the intervention strategy. It's our pilot program. It is the program for the middle school youth. It's very limited right now due to funding and timing. And what happens is we have the intervention specialists, coaches, and mentors, the students, as well as their parents, guardians, and families, to provide positive modeling, information about resources, education, and opportunities for the families to grow. Some of the things that the intervention strategist talks about during those different meetings include communication skills, active listening skills for the students. He's talked about verbal and nonverbal communication, because in some cases 6th graders aren't really aware of nonverbal communication that they're doing, and so this is a learning process. He's talked frankly about drug awareness, the effects of drugs, gang awareness, and then he's also planning on having a discussion with the students about conflict resolution. As we've talked about before, the intervention specialist is currently Gary Garza. He is working with the kids in Lewis and Clark and Franklin Middle School. So in the end, after the pilot program, we will be able to provide evidence and data to determine what worked, what can work better, and provide us more information about how a long-term program can be successful. And additionally, we can evaluate capacity based on his findings and determine what appropriate and necessary partners are out there based on the information that he's gathering. And we can talk about scale with regards to his experience working with 10 kids as one person. And he's already discussed with us some of that, so we will have some ideas about some of those issues. So, as I discussed, we do have specific surveys. We have a data collection strategy. We are doing both student participant surveys as well as parent guardian surveys, and they are we will receive quantifiable data as well as anecdotal data from that. And what we've learned from one of our consultants who has applied for OJJDP grant funding, and through her grant experience, is that the grant funders don't necessarily only want the data about how many days the kids were in school before the program and after the program, but also how it really affected them and their families. That anecdotal information, she said, is very important, so we're collecting that at the outset. And then we also are doing data on the village, so the surveys with the stakeholders and the community members, so we can get information about how they've, since the village program has started, how they've collaborated. Because there have been collaborations amongst people not involving the city that have arisen from that structure, just based on the fact that they had a safe, or a place that they could talk about their activities with other people who are doing similar projects. And so they have collaborated themselves and in some cases. And we hope that that continues with the village. We also convened the youth advisory group for this. We have 2 youth on the advisory group. One is a student at Eisenhower, one is a former Davis student. And we had them review the participant surveys to make sure that the language is appropriate and we were hitting everything. The participant surveys include information about social media, so it was helpful to have high school students look at that information and give us some information about what social media sites kids are using, what social media sites they're not using, what they are encountering in schools, and additionally, like what language is appropriate to use for students. We also had them talk about how they wanted to talk about how we could get high school kids involved in this program. They're very interested in that, and so we have some ideas about that as well. And their next meeting is May 20th, and we're going to further talk about some of those opportunities as well as some other issues that might come up. And then finally, the intern. We have an intern coming in from Stanford. She's originally from Sunnyside. She has been accepted to the program. That just happened last week. And Stanford is paying her to work with us on this program this summer. She's going to be working with our researcher from San Francisco State University and help with that data compilation. She's going to go out and do the interviews with the parents and guardians after the program is over and collect that data. She's going to do the interviews in person because we think we'll get better results if Gary Garza is not the one interviewing, because he was the one working with the students and the parents for the whole program. So this will be a more independent person that we hope that people can feel like they can be honest about the program and tell her everything that they thought about the program to give us the best data we can have. She starts June 17th, and she is fluent in Spanish, so that will also be helpful. So the real question is, how are we going to sustain this after the grant is over, our $150,000? And so far, we have received, as you know, the SAMHSA grant, the $299,000 a year, which we have been working with ESD 105 and their Open Doors program, which is a drop-in center for middle and high school youth who are out of school. And our money will help fund mental health services at that location for those students. So that's some funding that we've received that can help towards some of the goals of the GRIP program. We have some pending funding requests. We've applied for a grant from the Yakima Nation and the Community Foundation. And we also helped with OIC's recent OJJDP grant for mentoring services. They have applied for a grant to mentor 45 high school students for a 3-year period. And those students have to come through the Juvenile Justice Center, and they have to be low-risk offenders. So there is some overlap there. And we have agreed as part of that grant to provide some educational training services. And then, unfortunately, the third one on this list did not come to fruition, but the state has put aside some money for gang programming grants that will be statewide, which we will apply for. Future funding is we're looking at the OJJDP grants. They recently came out. There are 2 main ones. Matt Fairbank is convening a group of stakeholders to talk about the desistance and diversion grant opportunity. It's for youth who are both looking to exit gang activity and also those who are, and to divert youth who seem to be going that direction, and that's what our program is meant to do. So we will be meeting with stakeholders next week and hopefully applying for that grant. There's also a grant that we're looking into that would provide for a school-based program. So it'll be in partnership with the school district, and the program will actually take place in the schools. And so both of those could be good fits, so we're evaluating those. I would say that in our steering committee meeting today, we also have decided that we need to have a good future plan that we can provide to grantors, and the steering committee is talking about future plans, strategies, and next steps at its next meeting on June 4th. So at this point, the next steps are we're going to continue the pilot program through the end of June. So the grant terminates June 30th, and we will be running the pilot program through that day. We also will continue working on future opportunities, searching for grants, and we will compile the data, and hopefully that will provide us even more evidence and basis to get some grant money for that program. And once the steering committee has a plan for the future of the program, I will come back and present that as well. Are there any questions? Thank you.
I do have one. First, I just want to say thank you to you and the steering committee for all your work on this. I know it's really important, at least I think to the entire council, but I know it is for me as well, to see that this becomes sustainable and move forward. And on a separate note, I have identified 2 students from YVC in the internship co-op where they don't get paid, it's through college credit, that are interested in helping you as well. So they will be contacting you or going through Connie first through that MOU process.
Perfect.
Thank you. Council members, anyone else? Any questions, comments?
I think I'd just like to stress that we did spend some time making sure we were organized correctly for this effort, and I think it was well spent, and I'm really happy that the bylaws and the charter for the committee is accomplished. Some people may think $150,000 we should be further, but really when you take that money and start applying it towards staff, research, and the school resource officers' resources, his salary, I think we did accomplish something significant, and so I think we just need to stay on top of it as one of our strategic priorities to make sure that it just doesn't dissipate, and that we hold each other accountable to make sure that we ask staff to present opportunities for grants.
Councilmember Funk.
Yes, I'd like to say that I've been concerned that these described services impact such a small percentage of our at-risk population. And what I had hoped to see with this money was broader programs that were really more preventive in their orientation and would involve more young people.
I think the goal is to grow the program, and with the data that we receive, we can evaluate capacity and what that would look like, what kind of resources we would need, you know, a coach to student ratio that's realistic and things like that. So I think that people on the steering committee agree with you, Councilmember Funk, that this should not in the future be limited to 10 children. But we had a limited amount of funding, and it is the pilot program. So we look forward to finding a way to make it sustainable and affecting more youth in the city of Yakima and beyond.
Exactly. Anything else? Thank you.
Thanks.
Next is council reports. We are beginning with council reports from the partnership, and that would be from Council Acting Chair Hill.
So in our last partnership meeting, staff reviewed the affordable housing report and prioritized policy options with the committee. Mayor Coffey suggested having a meeting with residential builders to find out what their challenges are and how the city may be able to better assist them. Hill suggested having the Yakima Housing Authority attend the next meeting to explain the voucher process and statistics, so some questions came up about that. Joan Davenport stated staff is writing a $25,000 grant to the Community Foundation to support a housing action plan, which would focus on community engagement and coordinate efforts of partners and the city towards developing more housing options. Staff indicated that the housing action plan would look at the community, work with stakeholders, and evaluate all the options to increase, diversify, and equitably distribute all housing types within the city. And then lastly, a letter of support request from the Dispute Resolution Center was presented towards us, and I have a motion for that at the appropriate time.
All right. Let's go ahead and ask if there's any questions regarding this. Councilmember Funk?
Does the DRC already have the Community Foundation funding for this proposal?
They do not yet have the funding. The applications have been submitted, but the executive director asked us to go ahead and submit a letter of support.
And what is the ask in dollars?
Their grant is, I believe, is $25,000. That's their maximum.
And I'm trying to pull up the DRC support letter.
I have it right here. It's
Yeah.
to establish a network of local businesses and and organizations that struggle with homelessness. So there, it's again a convening and a coordinating role that the DRC would play.
Any further questions? If not, we're probably ready for a motion.
All right. I move that the city provide a letter of support for the Dispute Resolution Center for their grant application.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion for the Dispute Resolution Center for the letter of support, and it's by Councilmember Hill, and a second by Councilmember Cousins. Councilmember Hill, would you like to speak to your motion?
No.
Councilmember Cousins?
No.
All right. Any other council member? Councilmember Funk?
Yeah, I have a question. Was this an initiative from business owners, or was it a DRC initiative?
I believe it's a DRC initiative.
Do we have any sense of what the buy-in from the affected business owners is?
The conversation that I've had with the executive director indicates that she has done some outreach. So I don't know what the buy-in is. No, I'm sorry.
Are there any other questions, comments? I think we're ready for a roll call. If you'd repeat the motion, please.
Sure. Move that the city provide a letter of support for the DRC for this issue. Coffee?
Yes.
Cousins?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Funk?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Thank you. It passes unanimously. Is there anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Next council report is Council Public Safety Committee report by Chair Gutierrez.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. There's quite a few things to share. We talked about the annual report for the for the Yakima Police Department being moved to the following business meeting. So expect that to come in 2 weeks. We also talked about community policing, as we do, it's a standing item on the committee. There will be events happening tomorrow, Coffee with the Cop at Vieira's Bakery at 516 West Lincoln Avenue. We want folks to join the police department officers and the chief there. Also, 2 days later on May 11th, there'll be senior prom at the Harmon Center, where our officers will also be making a visit. May 19th, we have bike officers at Crime Stoppers Canyon for a day ride. So we want to welcome folks to join us on these dates. We also, and over the last month, have had some other community events. We've had Miss Sandino from the police department teach a child passenger safety class. We've had Detective Garza present at the Yakima Nation Tribal School, and Officer Henyon presented at YVC for safety awareness. And Sergeant Sanchez also did a DEA drug take-back day on April 27th. So we just want to let the community know that the police department is very active in trying to do educational programming and also in just ensuring that there's more opportunities to interact with the community outside of, the typical 911 interactions that you would normally expect. We also talked about the new BEAT, excuse me, I'm looking at my notes here, the new BEAT program, BEAT COP program, thank you. And we talked about some of the concerns around not having any requests yet be made in East Yakima for beat officers to make it out and say hi to someone or a group of folks or an organization. We're trying to keep tabs on how much people are actually using this new resource, and we really want to make sure that that this opportunity is well known around the community, so folks are actually asking to utilize it. But so far, nobody in East Yakima has asked to use it. I had mentioned it in a previous meeting that maybe we would need to have some sort of council discussion, perhaps with the police department, around how the council could potentially help increase the amount of interest around the BEAT COP program. But we didn't move that forward. I hope that maybe we can reconsider and do that eventually. I think that there could be great potential if we were to work together to try to get more folks to request this. But I just wanted to share that with the full council because our officers are doing a wonderful job at getting out there and responding to these requests. We need to do better as a city council to get folks to know this in our own districts. And so I'm taking responsibility for, the fact that District 1 has not requested any officer to make it out to visit them. And so, it's disappointing. However, that's an area for me to work on now, right? And so I encourage my colleagues to join me in on that. Lastly, did you have a comment to that?
I do have a comment on that. We also talked about in that meeting how, with that program, with the BEAT program, how the cops are actually getting out of their cars and walking through communities so that people are feeling more comfortable walking up to them and seeing them in a presence. So it is a new program, and we're hoping that more people will utilize it. And because it's new, I think we're seeing some low numbers, and it is my hope as well that those numbers will go up. And I also will do whatever I can to get District 7 and the whole city to take advantage of it.
Well, has anyone taken advantage of it?
Yeah, there's been a few calls. I think District 7 had a
what they reported
It's
was
by districts.
emails that had come in or phone calls that come in, and there wasn't very many. But Captain Jones also reported on 200, I think, social media contacts. So there's different ways that people are starting to reach out. So we do want to make sure that people are aware that they can call the YPD and say, hey, we're having a school PTA meeting or a church event. Or other ways, including social media, to get them to come and participate in community events.
Councilmember White, did you have?
I was going to talk about Sergeant Jones. He's quantifying how many times the officer actually gets out and makes a positive interaction with the people in those districts. Because in districts 1, 2, and 3, for the police department's breakdown, it's different than the city council's breakdown of the city, but they're actually keeping track of how many people they're reaching out to in those districts that have the most problems. And District 1 has the most problems, so that's where their focus is. And that number was 45 versus maybe 25, and it was just significantly higher in those districts that needed it most. So that's good to see.
Thanks for pointing that out.
And I think they're also trying, just another comment, different ways besides coffee with the cop, as Councilmember Gutierrez said. Some people can't afford to go and sit down and have coffee with a cop, or, timing issues. So they're looking at different ways to help people get engaged.
Yeah. So it is a work in process and work in progress. Both.
Both.
And okay, so lastly in the committee, we talked about the discussion with the Yakima School District on safe routes to all elementary schools. And we had a pretty extensive conversation about some of the desires from the committee around this as a strategic priority for the full council, and the staff's understanding of this as a priority. And so we would like to be able to arrive to the Yakima School District joint meeting prepared to offer the information and the roles and responsibilities that we as a city can take care of independently. And we also want to have a clear idea of where we actually need the cooperation of any outside partner, including the Yakima School District, so that we can have a direct ask related to the the safe routes to school priority. And this is for elementary schools. So we still, over the course of the last year or so, since we established this as one of the 10 strategic priorities for the city, we still don't have a citywide plan that would essentially, have create the vision of what it would take for the city to have safe routes to schools. And by safe routes, it's just safe pedestrian walking routes, okay, to different elementary schools across the whole city, and how that overlaps with the complete streets policy that the city already has, and how that overlaps with the comprehensive transportation plan that the city also has. And so I would like to make a motion on this matter now, so that we are all on the same page going into the Yakima City Council joint meeting. Considering it's only once a year, we want to make good use of that time.
Well, I have a question. It's my understanding that we do have how much more extensive do we need to get other than what has already been done as far as the studies that have been done around the sidewalks around the school districts? How much more do you need and want to have?
And that's a great question, and
I guess, let me quantify that. What specifically do you want that we're going to ask the school district for?
we need to have a clear idea
Or
from
even
our
our
own
own
city staff what we on our own independently can take care of, and what we need their cooperation on, and what we need their assistance on. And right now, we're not at that point because we haven't gotten a clear picture from our own city staff of what that citywide plan looks like. And if I may, I'd like to make my motion, and in there I'm asking for specifics. I move to direct staff to create a preliminary plan for the city's joint meeting with the Yakima School District to outline infrastructure countermeasures, non-infrastructure countermeasures, and a prospective prioritization matrix needed for a citywide action plan. In addition, staff is directed to clearly identify which of the identified components in this outline the city has city is directed to clearly identify which of the identified components in this outline the city has ability to address independently and which components absolutely necessitate a partnership.
Wow.
I'll second that for discussion. Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I didn't hear in there that you specifically said regarding sidewalks or schools or safe routes to school.
Infrastructure countermeasures are sidewalks and lights and speed bumps
To schools.
to try to address or lessen harm or danger by traffic. Yeah.
But did you want that to schools?
Yeah, to all elementary schools for this strategic priority.
Is that in there?
Yes.
I'm sorry, when you...
I thought it was in there. I thought I heard it.
I want to hear it again.
Okay, so move to direct staff to create a preliminary plan for the city's joint meeting with the Yakima School District to outline infrastructure countermeasures, non-infrastructure countermeasures, and a prospective prioritization matrix needed for a citywide action plan.
And then I think you need
for all elementary schools. In addition, staff is directed to clearly identify which of the identified components in this outline the city has the ability to address independently and which components absolutely necessitate a partnership.
Do you accept the change?
Yes, I accept the change.
Okay. What's your comment?
Well, do you want to go first since you made the motion?
Oh,
Yeah, if you want to speak to your...
yeah, thank you. Well, I mean, I've been talking about this for some time now. I've been trying to find out how we can organize ourselves as a city so that we are being clear about what we hope to have come out of a partnership with not just the school district, but with anybody else we might need to collaborate with on this strategic priority. It's really important that we take care of our most vulnerable folks within the youth population, little kids, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds to 10 or 11 years old are walking to school, and oftentimes in the lower income neighborhoods you have a high rate of kids walking to school, and during the winter time sometimes their kids are walking to their bus route or to their school in the dark because the sun's not out yet. And so we have, I think, the responsibility, but also the ability to try to work with our partners to address this issue. And it's really one of the most basic governmental responsibilities of local government. So I'm very much in support of this.
I'm also in support of this. I agree with Councilmember Gutierrez that we can't go into this meeting without being prepared and having done our end of the deal. You can't ask for something if we don't have any structure or come to the table with something, in my opinion, from one of our partners. So I'm very much in support of her motion.
Councilmember White, do you have anything on?
Yeah, I was at the public safety meeting and discussing this, and at that time Cliff was stating that up to that point his impression of safe routes to school meant just the safe route to school, defining, applying for grants for that program, safe routes to school. But under my, my definition of safe routes to school means safe routes to school, infrastructure and non-infrastructure. And we talked about that a little bit more with abandoned houses and stuff like that. But my biggest concern was that we had this priority and we didn't have a breakdown of what's been done so far by city staff and the path moving forward, a clear path. So what's been done, we didn't have that outline, and what's going to go forward, because we got presented with new information that I hadn't seen before. The survey that the schools are given, and so I think that this is what my interpretation is, that you're asking for that in writing right now, that you want what's been done in writing and the path moving forward in writing. Because that's what I think we need on all of our goals, and that we haven't got. And so there's no misinterpretation between staff or between council's direction and staff, the way the staff perceives it. So we can see where we're at and see where we're going. And I think it's important that we do that.
Councilmember Funk, did you have something? No. Councilmember Hill?
No.
Any further?
If I may, Mayor, before you vote, I would respectfully have a different sort of a take on the conversation related to safe routes to school and what the city staff has done. We have a 2040 comprehensive transportation plan, and pedestrian access is a significant component of that plan. Safe routes to school is one discrete element of the overall pedestrian plan. When you adopted safe routes to school as a council priority, the focus was on safe routes to elementary schools. You're all aware that we have done for every elementary school in the city, we have done an analysis of the sidewalks, where there are sidewalks and where there are no sidewalks, on a half-a-mile radius around each elementary school. That map is in my office that you've all seen. So we have done that work, and we've actually submitted to the Public Safety Committee on a number of occasions the history of how successful we've been in partnership with the school district in obtaining safe routes to school grants. We've submitted information on all those grants that we've received, and safe routes to school sidewalks have been built, where we partner with the school district to do a prioritization on an annual basis, so that collaboratively we can submit all the data that is required by the state for the safe routes to school grant. So, and we'd actually I'd send an email note to the Public Safety Committee after that meeting, reflecting on sort of that difference of opinion of safe routes to school being citywide versus really focused on schools. And we'd set up a meeting to meet today to go over the pedestrian component of the transportation plan. And unfortunately, council members were not available, but there's no way that we could start between now and the 16th of this month and create a plan as the council member has requested. I believe the majority of that plan already exists in our transportation plan. We've been very successful in collaborating with the school district on getting the information that we need from them to be successful in the grant applications. The safe routes to school are a component of our overall pedestrian plan that's in the 2040 transportation plan that you all adopted. So I think all of the pieces are there. Somehow we haven't been able to communicate that well and have that understood by the committee, and I'm sorry about that, but the material is there, and we have submitted it. And so I think rather than start afresh and try to create a new plan, reviewing what we already have adopted in place, and if there's a council will to talk about your strategic initiative of safe routes to school as something different than the safe routes to school grant program, that's a conversation we should have, because that's what we understood as staff when you adopted that as your strategic priority.
So what I think I'm hearing is, within the realm of what's realistic, can you at least produce for us a written synopsis of what you just described? So we can see a concise written summary of what's been done so far for safe pedestrian routes, because that's probably achievable by next week.
That's in your transportation plan, yes, that's already in.
Okay, so,
Yeah, with a map and so.
okay, great. So I don't think that satisfies the intent of the motion. I guess what I'd like to express is I am committed to something greater than just grants for elementary school safe routes, and that we don't have the time in this business meeting or prior to the school district meeting to have that kind of longer, exhaustive discussion about what we mean by safe routes to school. So I'd certainly be in support of looking at that strategic priority and making sure in the most succinct and specific terms that we let staff know what we expect. I'm still in support of doing whatever we can between now and then, but I'm also sympathetic to staff resources of being able to meet the verbiage of your motion by May 16th.
Yeah, I think that is a challenge. I think that the staff has worked hard to try to meet our goal, and there seems to be a disconnect between what the Public Safety Committee is asking for and what the staff is understanding and interpreting, and there doesn't seem to be a connect there. And I'm not sure that this is going to get us there. The request went into the school district, and we already got an answer to some degree.
Madam Mayor, it would be pointless to have a strategic priority that does not have an action plan nor extends beyond the normal routine that has always historically been done. And also, it doesn't make any sense why this is we're just now hearing this month from the city manager that we were not interpreting the strategic priority in the same way. We have been asking, I personally have been asking for this at council meetings, at committee meetings, for us to be able to consider additional factors and information that go beyond the scope of the Safe Routes to School grants and the requirements associated with that grant. And yet the city manager never mentioned before that he didn't understand or was interpreting that intention to get that information differently than what my intention was when I was asking for it. In addition, the map of sidewalks, and this is where I have to disagree, Mayor, that I do not believe that there has been a lot of hard work on this to this point. The map of sidewalks to let us know where sidewalks do exist and where they don't exist around schools, that was something that GIS probably did very quickly, considering that the majority of that work in data was already compiled and in our possession in records because of the website that was established after the equity study was completed. So that already, before this map that was just printed out and blown up and put on the wall at the last meeting, that information was already available on the website for the city. And so, no, there hasn't been extensive work done on this, and it's been a year since we talked about it last, and there hasn't been any real clear identification of what the city can do. When we sent a letter to the school district asking for different areas of focus to be considered from the school district, and they verbally responded to the city manager, letting the city know that the city was responsible for 4 or maybe all 5 of those factors, then why hasn't the city why hasn't staff provided that information, and why hasn't there been a plan created on how we can be responsible for those 4 or 5 things, or what's the extent of our participation of what we can do to get that information into the plan? And it simply I cannot accept that the staff does not understand that a priority typically requires an action plan, and so I can't accept that as
Well,
as
may I
true.
suggest to you that perhaps we're going about this incorrectly. Instead of worrying about what the school district does or does not do, I perhaps would suggest to you that there should be a directive then from the council on what our staff does or doesn't do.
I'm sorry, could I hear the motion again? Clerk, would you mind reading the motion for me
I'm
again?
sorry, I could not get the entire motion.
Okay, or Dulce, if you could just
Yeah.
read a little slower for me, please.
Okay, move to direct staff to create a preliminary plan for the city's joint meeting with the Yakima School District to outline infrastructure countermeasures, non-infrastructure countermeasures, and a prospective prioritization matrix needed for a citywide action plan for all elementary schools. In addition, staff is directed to clearly identify which of those identified components in this outline the city has ability to address independently and which components absolutely necessitate a partnership. So the plan doesn't have to be in full detail right now. It's a motion intended to get staff to come prepared to this next joint meeting with the school district with a clear presentation on what we will absolutely need to have a partnership on. But we can't provide that or make that specific ask if we don't know the extent of our own capabilities on in taking leadership on this.
I have a quick comment too. Is it okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was my only question. Thank
I
you.
think the city manager said Cliff said with the Complete Streets project that a lot of it's already done, so I don't know how, I don't think it's gonna be an extensive ask to get an action plan or at least get one started. And my fear is that we're gonna end up in this meeting with the school district and not have any results. And we want that good partnership so that we can obtain the goals that we're after.
Yeah, exactly. It's, there hasn't been that,
Collaboration,
we haven't had that encapsulation of all the information and what the plan is moving forward, like stated by Councilmember White. And that's what we're asking for here. So if it's being claimed by staff that a significant amount of work has been done, then put that into a summary and then identify what we still need partnerships on.
And if I might, Mayor, we have done that. We've submitted a memo to the Public Safety Committee on February 25th of 2019 outlining the process for safe routes to school. Before that, on June 26th, 2018, a public safety memo that outlines all of the activities, the partnership with the school district. So we do believe that we have been submitting material for the Public Safety Committee to review. And again, the 2040 transportation plan, safe routes to school is a component that fits inside that 2040 transportation plan. And there is a pedestrian component to that is beyond just the work that we've done for the half-a-mile radius around the schools. And it's not just where there are sidewalks and where there aren't sidewalks. We also had an internship program last summer where students walked those streets and did a kind of qualitative analysis of the condition of those. So we have that data as well.
But if I may, I feel like what was submitted was stuff to satisfy the grant applications and not specifically towards this
citywide effort.
Effort.
Exactly.
My comment.
I think if you would take the time to read the transportation plan and the safe routes to school as a companion document, then you would see how they fit together.
Okay.
Call the question.
All right.
Yeah.
Councilmember White.
I would just like to say that I understand that there's all this information out there, but there's no bringing it all together in a bird's eye view of what's going on in one document and one procedure, and that's what I think we're looking for is a bird's eye view of the breakdown of all those different moving pieces and bringing them all together into one document so we can see that and we know what's going on.
Councilmember Hill.
So, just parliamentary sense, we had a call for the question.
But no second.
I seconded it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I didn't. I'm sorry.
That's
I didn't
okay.
hear.
I didn't say very loud.
We had a call for the question, so we will have.
The vote is on the call for question first.
Yeah.
Cousins?
Vote for the call for the question.
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
No,
Funk?
no,
Yes.
we have to have a vote for the call for the question.
Right.
That's what we're doing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. I'll start over. Cousins?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Funk,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Coffee.
Yes.
Okay, I'll vote on the
Now
motion.
we will vote on the issue.
On
Do
the
you
actual
want-
motion.
Do you want to have the motion read one more
If
time?
the council wants me to read it one more
I
time.
understand.
I think everyone understands it.
Gutierrez,
Yes.
Funk,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Coffee,
Yes.
Cousins.
Yes.
Now, I hope that we understand what we're asking for. That staff understand
We
what...
understand.
I understand that it may be a regurgitation of what's already happened, but that's better than, I think that my teammates that have been on public safety have some concerns, and I'd like to see those assuaged before we walk into the meeting as to the staff's, the best of their ability.
So I will say again, there is no time between now and the 16th to develop a new plan. So we will try to repackage what we have already put together. Council, do you want to have an opportunity then to meet as a group before you go into your meeting with the school district to discuss the material that we package?
It's not a new plan unless you have an old plan you haven't shown us.
I'd just like to see it in
Okay,
writing.
let's...
And you said it was already pretty much done in Complete Streets, so I think we
Why
can
don't
find
you-
some info.
The motion
and-
is,
The motion is done. We've discussed it. Why don't you present what you have, and we will go from there.
And to be clear, I think your question is, do we want to meet? I don't want to meet.
No.
I would just like to see the written document emailed to me.
If public
Yep.
safety wants to meet and discuss it, then that is your determination.
thank you. That's
right,
all
do
for
you-
the
Do you have
report.
anything else for the public safety?
No, ma'am.
All right. Next is council report for economic development. Chair is Councilmember White. Do you have anything to report?
Yeah. About a month ago now, we went to the myself and Councilmember Cousins and a couple city staff and some members from the public went to the Main Street Conference in Seattle. It was a few-day event, but I guess my biggest takeaway was their biggest message was, start thinking smaller and getting rid of the, putting away the design and defend model that's been so popular that we've experienced personally. Yeah. Did you have anything to add on the conference?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the conference as well. I took away a little bit different, I think, than Councilmember White. There was a lot of shared spaces, what to do with second floors, alleyways, and other spaces that you could possibly have, kind of thinking outside the box. And in that stay and play or work and play kind of situation where maybe it's a living quarters upstairs and a work downstairs, just utilizing space in different ways. And I thought it was a really good conference, and I was lots of information was enlightening.
Great. Anything else?
Yeah, we had a lot reported on from the airport. Most of the meeting was Rob Peterson talking. One of the biggest things is the progression of the Port Authority, and so Rob will be seated at the table for the Chamber of Commerce.
YCDA.
YCDA. Okay, so he'll be facilitating that because that's one of the bigger, one of the goals is working with the airport there. But the next big thing is we've been discussing the CBD Central Business District property registration, and do you have some information on that, Sarah?
Sure. Yeah, so we've been discussing vacant properties within the Central Business District for a few months now. And at the last meeting, the committee outlined 5 goals or outcomes of a proposed or a proposal for a vacant building registry ordinance. So the 5 outcomes that were outlined and agreed upon by the committee members are that they would hope that any ordinance would result at some point in no boarded up buildings in the CBD, active marketing of properties for rent or sale within the CBD, having a registry with a fee, but allowing building owners who meet certain criteria to avoid paying the fee associated with the ordinance, which would include having no nuisance activity on their property, having their sidewalks cleared and cleaned, having window displays, art, streetscape, or beautification on the property, and active marketing of the property. The fourth was to decrease the amount of time buildings stay vacant with the desire to have no long-term vacancies within the CBD. And the fifth was to increase development of adjacent residential properties located in the CBD. And the idea behind figuring out the outcomes and the goals was that it would help staff formulate an ordinance that would move towards some of, you know, those goals with an ordinance within the CBD. And if it works well in the CBD, we can look at expanding that. I wanted to point out that in doing the research, I did look at other cities' ordinances. The city of Everett has an ordinance that deals with vacant building registry within their commercial district, and that was one of the ones that we evaluated. And if the council approves moving forward and directing staff to draft such an ordinance, we also discussed at the Economic Development Committee that staff would work with YCDA and DAY in that ordinance drafting, and then bring it back to the the Economic Development Committee for review as well. And I think the overall goal is to encourage the renting and selling of vacant property, but not penalizing those property owners who have properties that just don't meet the criteria of someone looking to rent or buy within the city, as long as owners are taking positive steps within the CBD and not having nuisance activity. We wouldn't want to penalize them, but having a registry would be beneficial for those reasons. So the committee asked for the full council to direct staff to draft an ordinance that can address vacant and abandoned buildings within the CBD through a registry.
Yep, and I can make that as a formal motion yeah. So I move to direct staff to create an ordinance for the property
Can we do that now?
Absolutely.
Of course.
Yeah. To create an ordinance for the Central Business District Property Registry.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to direct, excuse me, go ahead, repeat that.
Direct staff
To create a
ordinance.
to create a preliminary ordinance for the Central Business District Property Registry.
All right, thank you. And we have a second for that. Do you want to speak to your motion?
Yeah, we've been talking about it for a long time and had several concerns that we weren't just penalizing people. We know that nobody wants to have their property vacant, but you know, and we wanted to make sure that they could do something about it, and not have to pay the fee just to pay the fee. But there are several properties that have been vacant for years and years in that district, and we just want to do whatever we can to make the area look better, and to hopefully stimulate some growth down there. And working with Day, and you know, they supported some realtors that were speaking out supported it. So and this is a trial. You know, I know that the conversations have been talked about for property registry, but this could give us a foundation for what that looks like and how it plays out, and you know, some of the ins and outs of it. So
Thank you. Councilmember Funk? Do you,
I think it's a good idea.
okay. Council members?
Yeah, I have a comment. I brought this up a long time ago after the AWC meeting regarding vacant properties. I think it's a great idea because people have vacant properties for different reasons, some tax write-offs, or sometimes they just can't rent them. So I think it's a really good idea that we put something in effect so that we can help our central business district.
Anyone else?
No.
No. I think we're ready for roll call.
Funk,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
White,
yes.
Coffee,
Yes.
Cousins,
Yes.
Gutierrez.
Yes.
Passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that forward, Councilmember White. Next on the agenda is item 6, the consent agenda. Items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion without discussion. A council member may request an item be removed from or added to the consent agenda. If approved by the council, any items removed from the consent agenda will be placed on the regular agenda for discussion and consideration. Are there requests to remove from or add an item to the consent agenda? Councilmember Funk.
I have a comment on C, very quick, and a question on E. I don't think either of them needs to be extracted.
You just have a quick comment?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want them pulled, you just want to make a quick comment?
Yeah, that's
Yes, that's what she
Go
said.
ahead.
My comment about the insurance settlement report, I was concerned that the large settlement, the $500,000, was not adequately represented there, but it is under the protected information item 13 on this agenda, so I was satisfied with that. With regard to the airport runway, is this a use of the airport boarding funds, or what is the source of the funds for this project?
Typically, the funding for airport upgrades is 90% FAA and 10% is the city match or passenger facility charge.
So, is the passenger facility the boarding fees?
Yes.
Okay, so 10% is boarding fees and 90 from the FAA. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
Madam
you.
Mayor, can we put number 8 on the consent?
We can if there's no objection.
Give me just a moment.
Oh, no, I have comments about it.
Okay, so no.
All right.
All right, would you like to read the consent agenda?
Item 6A is approval of minutes from the April 16, 2019 City Council regular meeting and April 23, 2019 City Council special meeting. Item B is project completion and contract acceptance for Noble Electric, Inc., Project 2414 Randall Park improvements. Item C is a resolution accepting and approving the first quarter 2019 claim report for the City of Yakima. Item D is a resolution authorizing an agreement with the Yakima Valley Empires Association for officiating services for the City of Yakima's organized softball program. Item E is a resolution authorizing an engineering services agreement with JUB Engineering for engineering services to rehabilitate the runway 927 high-intensity runway lighting system. Item F is a resolution authorizing a contract with Stellan Construction for the widening, reconstruction, and other related roadway and utility work on River Road from 34th to 40th Avenues. Item G is an ordinance amending the City of Yakima Municipal Code Section 1.18.040 to add the Public Safety Communications Division to be under the direction of the Fire Chief in cooperation with the Police Chief.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda and a second. Would you like to speak to your motion? No? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. It passes unanimously. All right, next on the agenda is item 7, public comment. This is the opportunity for community members to comment on items not on the agenda for tonight's business meeting. If you would like to speak during public comment, you must fill out a slip on the table outside the council chamber doors and indicate which agenda item you wish to speak to and hand it to the city clerk. Public comment remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person. The council will listen to comments made during public comment, but will likely not respond directly to concerns or questions during tonight's meeting. City staff will be directed to research an issue and make a report. We will not take any more council comments at this point after this one is submitted.
Do we have the clock somewhere nearby?
I haven't
timer.
seen it.
Just can you want to use your...
Okay.
I don't know where it is. James Turner is our first. If you would approach the podium and repeat your name and city of residence.
James Turner and Yakima. Hi everyone.
Hello.
I just have to say that it's getting into the summer months now, and well, again, and I'm pretty proud of the fact that it's getting closer to getting, I guess you could say, crews out there to assess the area. And been working on this for about 1.5 years now, and I'm going to be contacting Scott Schaefer's office again to let him know that someone has actually tried to run into the speed trap sign down by the school, but it's too close to the wooden power line pole, so I think that talked him out of it. But yeah, I'll be contacting him about well, some misfunctions, I guess, in the signs, and I noticed it when I was trying to keep my speed at the speed and the screen went dark. So it's like, okay, I guess I have to contact him again. But they both seem to be misbehaving, like not working right. So that's what I'll be contacting his office for. But other than that, just wanted to update and let y'all know that it's getting closer to happening officially, and I'm pretty proud of that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Turner.
you. Mr. Joe Mann, you'd approach, repeat your name and city of residence.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
Joe Mann, Yakima. I want to talk about public comment and audience participation. Maybe I'm showing my age, but I remember when City Council was in the middle of the day and very few residents could show up. So you had very little public comment or audience participation because nobody was there. I want to applaud councils before you for changing the time so people can show up, but now it sounds like maybe too many people are showing up with too much comment. And well, I know, I don't know what the answer is, but I hate to see that time limited because I appreciate the community feeling like the city is theirs and having a say in what happens. I'm pretty active in going to meetings and trying to participate in things that are going on, and I say I don't know what the answer is, but I definitely want people to be able to walk up to the podium and spend the 180 seconds that they're given and state what they can. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Luz Gutierrez.
Good evening, City Council. Luz Pasan Gutierrez, and I'm from Yakima, and I live in Yakima. And I wanted to thank you for letting me speak today. Just like Joe Mann said, we're here all the time, you know, we're regulars. But we had, I want to let you know that we had a very, very successful Cinco de Mayo, and want to thank the city of Yakima and all the guests we had from out of town. We had so many people from Montana, from Idaho, stopping in because they said, what's going on downtown? All these people around here. So we want to thank the city manager and the new police chief for going there. And maybe some of you were there and I didn't see you because I was stuck in the beer garden and I had a lot of work to do. But thank you for being there. And it was, you know, it was a Cinco de Mayo, but it was also two things. It was gang prevention work that we do, which we don't even get recognized for. And secondly, police recruitment that we do, which we don't get recognition for. Because while the police chief was there, number one, he already made contact with little kids that want to be policemen. Because they saw him and he was there and they got to touch him and he got to hug him. And so therefore they're future policemen and women that were there because he couldn't get out of there. Everybody wanted to take their picture with him. So, and they also got to meet 4 young men that are part of the recruitment that we do to have young people have input and receive some stipends for the work that they do. We usually use the Boy Scouts. And this year they couldn't come in to help the cleanup. And so we said, well, you know what, let's recruit some young people from Davis High School that happen to be people that I know because they're from the community. And they came to the event, and we worked with a contractor who then hired them and gave them a stipend to be able to work. And the police chief got to meet them, and the city manager. And it was quite an impression for them. I just want you to know, because I did a debriefing with them on the work that they did. They did excellent work. And so they were very honored. They were working, but they were honored because they had never met a city manager. They had never met the police chief. They had never met a policeman, period. And so I think you asked one of them, and someone said that he did want to go into police work. So this is what recruitment's all about. Where was the police department? They should have had a booth there. They should have been recruiting. That's where you go. Instead of having these special meetings, no. Go to these events where the people are. They're there. They're there. They want to be recruited. So I want to thank you for going. I think that was very, very special. And then as far as the young ladies that were there, the Miss Cinco, my time's up.
You've run out of time.
But thank you, because I want you to know that we had 2 young ladies that did get 2,000 scholarships each. And thank you. And we'll see you next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Luz.
Next is Joey Anderson.
Good evening, Joey Anderson, District 2.
Good evening.
As I sat here this evening and I listened to many discussions of topics and stuff, including this Beat Cop program that you guys are supposedly running, in my 13 years of living in Yakima and living at my current residence for 9 years, hardly do I ever see YPD come through unless somebody got shot, somebody got stabbed, or somebody got ran over. So if you see YPD running through my neighborhood, take a picture because that's a Kodak moment. The next generation that's going to be at this horseshoe really, really, really needs to start going out and actually talking to everybody in their district if they're thinking about running. I don't think they should be just staying to one particular section, but cover the whole area and actually take the time and discuss some of the stuff that goes on around here, whether it be city documents for transparency and accountability, which I'm sorry you guys fail miserably on, or when other council members are trying to figure out what in the world is going on with certain programs that could help and benefit trying to ease up some of the strain that our town is facing. I think that is really detrimental to the situation. I was here last month and I listened to some of the stuff that was going on in concerns about Councilmember Funk. She raised some pretty interesting points, and as me being a little homebody, I've actually taken the time to also do some research, and yes, there are problems and they do need to be addressed. But the way I see it too, everybody around here needs to be treated equally, and I do understand that you guys have a shortage with police officers and stuff, but make sure that with this new chief, I'm going to keep my eyes on him, and I hope and pray that body cams will be purchased. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, under department items, is item 8, a contract with T.H. Stonewood. ONDS Manager Archie Matthews will introduce the item.
Good evening, City Council.
Good evening.
The City of Yakima has been requested by the ownership group of Stonewood Apartments to provide $50,000 of home funds to support the development of 60 low-income housing units proposed to be constructed at 1205 East Spruce Street. The project consists of 5 3-story buildings with parking and green space on the north side of East Spruce and is valued at $7.5 million. Contribution of the federal HUD home program provides a local match for the developer and ability for the city to monitor the affordability of a floating unit for a minimum of 20 years. This project is a collaboration of construction and management by Bond Bay Construction as a private corporation out of Tacoma, and Stonewood LLC will be the managing ownership. This project is in close proximity to other existing apartments owned by the same organizational setup. In the city of Yakima, this project will be their 5th major multifamily development. Other developments are located at 901 East D Street, 209 Fair Avenue, 1304 East Spruce Street, and 1121 East Viola Street. They also own and operate 2 developments in the city of Sunnyside. These apartment complexes have been well managed and maintained. The primary financing for this project is the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program. The Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program helps create affordable apartment communities with lower than market rents by offering tax incentives to the property owners, not the tenant renting the unit. These projects may also have a rental subsidy program attached to them, such as project-based Section 8 program. The participation of home funds helps diversify the funding sources for Bond Bay Construction and is recommended to meet some of the low income housing tax credit program criteria. This project has completed the zoning and environmental reviews.
Thank you. Council members, do you have any questions? Councilmember Funk?
I have some comments. I think that this is wonderful. This is exactly what we're trying to do in developing more affordable housing. I appreciate your coordinating with this project, and I appreciate the supplemental information that you added to the resolution. We have some excellent low-income housing projects with successful long-term management here in Yakima, and to utilize the companies with the record of success should be our top priority, and the planning department should be tracking successful addition of new developers and management corporations that can do this work. This also relates to agenda item number 9, which I'll talk about later.
Thank you. Any other?
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I move to adopt the resolution.
Second.
Second.
All right, we have a number of seconds, but we do have a motion to adopt the resolution, and I think Councilmember Cousins was the first to second it, so would you like to speak to your motion?
Well, I'm in complete support of this project. It's going to be greatly beneficial to lots of different families across the city, so that's all I have to say.
Thank you. And would you like to speak to your second?
Just, I'm also in support of this project. Affordable housing is something that we're really in need of, so I appreciate any time this comes before us, a project like this.
Anyone else want to speak to this?
I have a question
Yes.
for Archie. I don't know if he's the subject matter expert for this particular question, but in the summary explanation, it says of the total units, which is 60, 45 will be set aside for qualified farm workers and 12 units for disabled persons. So that comes out to, what, 57 out of 60 units have pre-designated.
Yes.
Why is that restriction put on in the proposal? I mean, is that a city thing, or is that from Stonewood, or
No,
Stone?
that probably has to meet the low-income tax credit criteria. The reason that we put our funding in there is generally they need a set of local participation to meet that funding criteria as well.
All right, thank you.
There's a variety of federal loan programs, and each have their own specific criterion. And one thing that we want for sure to council to know also is over the last 10 years, the city has invested $12 million like this. Typically, we're the last mile funding, and the small amount of, you said $50,000 in a $7.5 million project, it just allows the developer and the manager to leverage those funds. We've helped contribute funding for over 1,300 units in the last 10 years, low income and moderate income housing.
Good. Anything else?
No.
All right, I think we're ready for roll call.
This is a resolution authorizing an agreement with T.H. Stonewood 1 LP in the amount of up to $50,000 in federal housing and urban development home funds for assistance with the construction of 60 low-income housing units. Hill?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Coffee?
Yes.
Cousins?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Funk?
Yes.
Passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is item 9, a discussion on an affordable housing project. Community Development Director Joan Davenport will introduce this item. Joan.
Good evening. Hello.
Hi, Joan.
There.
This is a follow-up report from your March 12th study session that we held on affordable housing. And at that, you will remember that there was unanimous support from the council to pursue basically every item that we put on that list. You said, please go look at that. And so we ended up with 20-some tasks that were identified in that affordable housing report. Some of those items were directed to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission's held a couple of study sessions already on that. The partnership, as Councilmember Hill reported, had a preliminary one-time through looking at the items that had been reported. And then there were a number of items that we identified at that study session that really do require some more dialogue, and because they're policy issues, they weren't really ripe to assign to a committee yet. So as we have gone through the last 6 weeks of working through the items, and I will say that this report that I submitted to you contains a number of summaries about each one of those tasks. I am not going to go through those for you today. They're for your reading to let you know that we are looking at them. But as we have gone through these issues, it has become very apparent to us that this is more than complicated. It's also going to be pretty personal to the folks who live in Yakima. And that is been experienced in a number of other communities in the nation that have dug in for affordable housing issues. You know, the city of Seattle took 3 years to walk through some changes in the zoning of their R1 zoning district. There's been many examples of communities that have really, I want to say struggled, but they've certainly had lots of dialogue about what's the right thing to do. And so to summarize, I think where your staff is, we are recommending that you consider initiating a community engagement process that would facilitate public participation and education about the potential changes to ordinances, to address the issues of neighborhood preservation and protection of existing neighborhoods, to talk about the issues of housing density and housing choice diversity. This would be having an early engagement process as part of what we've been calling or referring a housing action plan. It would encapsulate all of these issues and allow the community to engage from the very beginning. We have concern that if we shuffle these items out, it's highly likely that we're going to get a real fragmented result and that we won't end up in maybe a cohesive or efficient process. I think what I want to say is that we've done lots of reading. At the partnership committee, we brought a handful of other communities. They're not all called housing action plans, but they're similar, of analysis and community engagement processes. And I also brought to that committee meeting a copy of the equity study that we did. And the equity study that we commissioned with WSU Metro team, they looked at our 2010 census data and did some really, really helpful analysis of the demographics and the characteristics of the community. And I think it was pretty powerful information. Also powerful in that we have some real disparities, as we know, and I think housing and neighborhoods is the one area where we could really make a difference if we step back and do this as one project altogether. We have talked to the company that worked with us and helped facilitated the comprehensive plan that the city manager talked about. We were in the right place at the right time to hire a company called Burke Associates, and they have done some of the really good premier comp plans in the state for many communities. They've also followed up in some of those communities, like the city of Ellensburg, on housing plans. So the fact that they did for us a really, really good comprehensive plan, and I know I've shared that with the Healthy Communities neighborhood, has spent a fair amount of time talking about the housing element of the comprehensive plan. But we have the opportunity. I did call them and say, you know, talk to me about what it would take to do a housing action plan for the city of Yakima. And we talked about it. Again, we have good data. We have this framework of the equity study also that has identified areas of need in the community. And you know, just to be honest, well, I have some of those on the second page that I'll go through real quickly. But what I found out is that it's going to cost somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000 to wrap this up into a housing plan. We think that it's in everybody's best interest to bring in somebody who's an expert in not only housing and policy and demographics, but also somebody that could help do some of the community engagement portion of the plan, and to be able to talk. You know, and one idea would be that we would have a community meeting in each one of your districts. We might end up doing it maybe at the schools, you know, but we need to go to the community and we need to talk about it. And that's advice that we got from a lot of people. We also made contact with the Department of Commerce. They often have planning money available. We asked, do you have any planning money for this? And what we were told is, not yet. But that call was made a couple of weeks ago before the state legislature wrapped up. As you know, affordable housing was a huge topic in the state legislature, and what we were told is be patient. There will be some programs, maybe even with funding attached, that come out of the legislation, and maybe the city manager or Randy can talk more about the programs that did get approved. Because we think that there may be some funding at the state level. As we did apply for a housing action plan grant with the Community Foundation. That's the third time you've heard that theme today. So we know that we probably won't get all three of them, but it'd be awesome if we did. The grants there are $25,000. And to be honest, what I heard from the staff at the Housing or the Community Foundation was that they thought this was an intriguing idea for the community, and they especially liked partnering or piggybacking on the equity study to do it that way. I won't go through much more of the report. There is a page on each one of the elements. If you're interested in any of the particular tasks, let us know. But I think the big ask from us today and recommendation is please consider maybe helping us step back a little bit and doing a comprehensive study.
Thanks, John. Councilmember Funk.
I'm not happy with that for several reasons. First of all, I think the Comprehensive Plan 2040 is pretty good and gives pretty good coverage on this. I don't think it's necessary to go out and have more community meetings to reiterate what we already know. Secondly, the Stonewood housing project that Mr. Matthews just talked about, this is exactly what we want to solve the problem and move forward. I don't see how a housing action plan as it's laid out this way is really going to promote or facilitate that. And thirdly, my concern is that I want to see that whatever we do going forward recognizes the lessons of the bicycle apartment complex. And I'll start by saying that I live 2 blocks away from a very large clean and sober housing project managed by First Step Housing, same group that is going to manage the bicycle apartments. It's a great project. I love to go in there and door knock and meet residents who have difficulties but are now getting a safe place to live. The bicycle apartments are going to be a similar thing, and in practical terms, there's no reason that that development shouldn't have been welcomed in that neighborhood. Instead, what happened was there was a lot of not in my backyard pushback. The amount of time that was spent doing those hearings and waiting and adjudicating that, I don't think it changed any of those people's minds. People are going to be unhappy if they don't get what they want and what they think they deserve. That's a given. I'm also concerned that these grant applications to the community foundation directly compete against grants that actually deliver services for kids, which is much dearer to my heart than these projects. And I'm concerned that this housing action plan and the way it's described as community engagement to facilitate public participation in education related to ordinance changes, neighborhood preservation, housing density, housing choice diversity, just gives an amplified voice to a not in my backyard discussion, when what we really want is expediting adjudication of projects like the bicycle apartments. I don't see that this housing action plan, as you envision it, or having neighborhood meetings, is really going to facilitate solving the problems that we have to solve. It's really property developers, management agencies, and landlords that solve these problems. And I have had members of those groups come to me and tell me that they feel that they are not being heard, their concerns, their problem solving is not embraced. And if we're going to have a lot of group discussion, I would like to go in that direction.
Thank you. Councilmember Cousins?
Yeah, I had the privilege of sitting on the partnership committee where this was the preliminary discussion of affordable housing was. And that very thing, Councilmember Funk, came up, is having a meeting with the players, the builders and developers. And so I think that is a good point. It's well taken that they need to have conversation or a voice, seat at the table, however you want to put that. But I do have a concern around that, and that is having it stay in the partnership committee. Just wondering if it is better served to be in economic development or even healthy communities, as homelessness and affordable housing, I believe, is part of healthy communities, overall goals, strategic plans, whatever, however you want to call that.
Well, homelessness is in all of the committees.
I share Councilmember Funk's concern about if the comprehensive plan 2040 is adequate. I'm really resistant to creating more documents. I don't know that it is. I don't have the comprehensive plan memorized. You okay over there, Kay?
It is adequate.
Oh, okay. All right. So, and I tend to believe her assertion that it's typically property managers, landlords, and builders that would come with solutions. That, as Councilmember Cousins says, that we were kind of planning on meeting with them anyway. So I don't know what action to take today, and I hate to do that without reading this 29-page document provided by Joan. So I don't plan on taking any action today until I digest this. And as far as moving it to another committee, I don't have much concern on what committee handles it. I think one's as good as any other, but I'm trying to determine what I think is the appropriate role of government in this. But it is one of our strategic priorities to address affordable housing. So it's kind of like the mill site. Like I know what I'd like to see happen, but I don't know what role the city council plays in that. And in terms of expedited adjudication, we just had a long discussion about public comment and the necessity for it. And the bicycle apartments is in my district, and a lot of people who worked a long time for retirement, and whether you agree with it or not, they expected to retire in a certain way, and they're alarmed to see low-income housing move in next to them. Ultimately, I voted to approve the bicycle apartments as well because there's a process that we follow that allows them to have that comment, and there was nothing unlawful or outside of our ordinances for us to deny the owner to build that. So I think it's still an important process, whether the public's satisfied with it or not completely. So once again, doesn't require any action, but I just wanted to say that there was a lot of pushback due to that construction, and I think it's important, whether or not it changes the outcome, to hear residents' voices on the issue.
I do have questions about the meeting taking place between property developers and council, and what I don't really know anything about it or what they're trying to obtain. But if they're trying to obtain, if it, like Councilmember Cousins mentioned, that it's in the right place, if they're looking to develop properties and create properties, and they're talking about zoning issues and different things like that, then it would be good to have them in economic development. But if they're talking about other things, it would be have them in the appropriate place. But I don't know. I don't have a lot of information on that. So
well, I think the thought was, if I may, that we're talking about affordable housing, so it would be talking to property developers, housing developers, to see what could be done to help have them have affordable housing. If I may finish, Kay, so that rather than having it in property developers as far as commercial properties, that was the thought. Councilmember Funk, you had a question?
I'd just like to ask people to recall that there was a lot of drama in the meeting where this task was given to the Partnership Committee. I was not in favor of it, and I hope that we can kind of look back and learn the lessons of how we do that and whether we're putting our best foot forward.
I'm not sure.
What lessons do you think there were to learn from the bicycle apartments? I mean, honestly, I'm trying to get to the root of what you're thinking.
I have passed on to another subject.
She was talking about the Partnership Committee now. Do either one of you have anything to say?
Well, I just wanted, because I wanted to get some clarification around the difference between having a housing action plan be completed if we have the funds to do it, that would emphasize affordable housing on a much more aggressive, with a much more aggressive approach, and if that's missing in the previous plan, because that wasn't yet a priority when that plan was created.
In comprehensive plan.
The comprehensive plan for 2040 was. So Joan, could you explain to us why this would be a new asset to add to that, as opposed to just replicating the same work?
So I think some of the takeaways that we've had in looking at this issue is that in the R1 zoning district, which if you look at a city zoning map, about 65% of all city property is zoned R1, single family neighborhoods. Everything else takes up the rest of the 45 or 50% of the property. Single family neighborhood zoning is fairly restrictive. You know, you can't even build a duplex there without a zoning review and notifying your neighbors. And so if the goal is to, number one, distribute density so that it is not all concentrated east of 16th, and to get affordable housing in small pieces on the west side of town, then we're going to have to look at the toolbox that goes with the R1 zoning district. And we have the one thing that I would say about our situation here, and that the comp plan does not really do a good job of talking about, is how much of the vacant R2 and R3 land is held in major land holdings like Congdon. So when we have, on paper, we've got lots of vacant land, but it's not necessarily available in 2 to 5 acre chunks, which is what the developers, the profit and the nonprofits are looking for. Small pieces of land, 3 to 5 acres is what they're looking for. And we really have a shortage of that east of 16th. So if we do not do something to help diversify the kind of housing that's on the west side of town, then we're locked into this pattern that we're in. And that was the point of the equity study, was, you know, step back and look at things with an equity lens. You know, we've talked about that a couple of times here this evening. The equity lens is to make it not equal, but equitable.
Right, and if I may just finish my thought. Also, another point I'd like to bring up for council's consideration is the current permit and fee structure right now incentivizes to build larger for more money, to be able to charge higher rental fees, or and so, you know, we're not yet talking about how to reform that fee structure in detail. We've talked about it, you know, informally in the Economic Development Committee. I know Councilmember White and Mayor Coffey certainly have made comments to me about it. And so talking about how we can reform the system so that developers are incentivized to develop smaller and more affordable units would be wonderful. But again, that's something that's coming up to the forefront now that we've prioritized affordable housing. And prior to that prioritization being put in place, the comprehensive plan didn't include that.
I agree with you.
Matt,
However, Councilmember Cousins, I thought I saw your hand prior. Councilmember Funk.
I disagree. I think that the 2040 comprehensive plan does focus and hit pretty hard on the urgency of the affordable housing problem. And I think it gives us a pretty good list of tools that can be used to improve the situation. And so I think what needs to be done is just go through step by step and see which of those tools we need to take out of the toolbox and put into place. And what you're saying about making sure that we have multifamily zoning in 2 to 5 acre packages, that's an important tool. Expedited adjudication, that's an important tool. Those are both listed in the comprehensive plan already.
Okay.
I tend to agree with Councilmember Fung. I don't want to produce repetitive documents, and I'm yet to be convinced that we need an additional document to accomplish this. I want the right tool, and I greatly respect Joan and her team. So, Joan, can you tell me why that's needed and why the comprehensive plan is not sufficient?
Well, I'm not saying it's not sufficient. I'm
Okay.
just saying that it is not necessarily a blueprint to the next action. But
Okay.
there is seriously, there is a lot of techniques and tools in there. But when it comes down to really talking about and evaluating the implementation measures and prioritizing the implementation measures, I think that's where we are going to be challenged, I guess, is the right way to say it. And I mean, we're all in. We're 100% all in on this affordable housing topic.
Yeah.
And it will become, I think, if we choose not to go this direction, if we choose not to do an action plan and a community engagement process, then we're going to have to work really hard to make sure that we communicate. Because the folks that live in the R1 zone who don't want that duplex, much less a 5-plex in their area,
Right.
that's a big deal. And the other thing I guess I wanted to say is that we have some utility issues in this community too. We have areas that are underserved by sewer, and we have some pockets of very needy land that is still on wells, private wells in this community. And so bringing, so one of the most obvious things, I think Dave Brown is the one who said it to us, then we should prioritize the land that is near existing water and sewer for affordable housing. That's a policy issue. That is not a zoning issue. That is a policy issue. And that's going to be stepping back a bunch. We also have some other policy issues that they're complicated, and they're not just housing. They're infrastructure issues. And
Just
so,
support housing.
yeah, but they're community development. That's what we do. So, I mean, we're here to educate. We're here to talk. It's been a long night, so I will stop talking.
Well, I move to approve initiating a housing action plan.
Based on this report.
Yeah, it's even in the summary explanation that there's a
Yeah.
recommendation to initiate the housing action
Okay.
plan by staff.
Second.
I have a clarification question. Are you talking about in this format that's described in this report?
Yes, as presented.
As presented. All right, so we have a motion to initiate a housing action plan as presented, and a second. Councilmember or Deputy Mayor, would you like to speak to your motion?
Well, I think there's going to be some additional information that could be beneficial to the overall process through a housing action plan process. So I support it.
Okay, Councilmember
Couldn't have said it better.
All right. Councilmember White, would you like to speak to the
So
motion?
you're asking for us to proceed forward with the $50,000 action plan? Is that?
Well, technically my motion is to initiate it. So initiating it could include applying for that grant, and seeing, following up with the council on where we're at in the process, and if the funding doesn't come through, then we'll have that discussion.
And there were 2 bills that passed and have been signed by the governor now related to affordable housing and homelessness. One allows a greater flexibility for REIT 2 to be used for affordable housing, and that could be used perhaps for planning. We're not sure yet how that's going to play out. The other one allows cities to retain 1/10% of sales tax that would have otherwise gone to the state for homelessness and affordable housing, and that's our lobbyists have estimated that's about $195,000 a year for the city of Yakima, and so we'll want to see the details on how that gets implemented. But there's two potential funding sources there if the part of the funding for this plan doesn't come through in the community foundation grant.
Thank you. Councilmember Funk.
Yeah, I would just like to say again that I won't support this if for no other reason that the Community Foundation grant application directly competes with child services. I won't support it.
Okay. Councilmember White.
I'm still not convinced that this is the needed steps to move forward. It sounds like there are several things identified, and I'm still unclear as to why, if we have this R1 problem, it sounds like there's several problems identified, and if there's a solution for them, then we should be taking action on them and looking at them individually. And I don't know why we couldn't do that, why we need somebody else to step in and tell us that we need to do that. I mean, unless they have some magic. I mean, I don't know. Is there something that I must be missing something, because I don't see why, if the problems are identified, why we can't start working on solutions.
Well, did you read the 29-page report? It identifies a number of different problems, opportunities, but primarily challenges, and also opportunities as far as to meet those challenges.
Another thing too that could be part of the answer to your question, Councilmember White, is that when you have a thorough plan or community-oriented approach, you have more credibility lended to your plan, and perhaps even that could allow for opportunities for resources in the solution phase of this strategic priority.
The only thing I would add is that we're not envisioning, none of these communities have done a binder. These are not big plans. We're talking about someone coming in, helping to facilitate some conversation about what priorities should be your first, what's the best and easiest thing to do. If we go back with the folks who wrote our housing element of the comprehensive plan, who again have written a number of these housing action plans, they could help us step back and look at what is the first best thing to do. So, and then bringing the community in right up front.
Okay, we do have a motion. Councilmember Hill, would you like to speak to this?
I kind of have a bias towards action. I don't want to do anything reckless. I don't want to do any harm. I think that's important. I don't know how much harm is going to come from staff taking some time. It sounds like that's the commitment right now to get a little bit more specific about steps. I am concerned that these are complementary documents. I mean, if there's something wrong with the Comprehensive Plan 2040, that should be fixed. If there's, we can't have, I just cringe when I know we already have exhaustive studies that sit on a shelf and well, maybe they don't sit on a shelf. Okay, sorry.
No.
I'm sure they're used. I just want to make sure that they go hand in hand and it's part of a larger strategic vision, and it sounds like it is, and it sounds like they're complementary, and it sounds like this would enhance what's laid out in the 2040 plan.
If I just could offer an observation, if we don't engage the community up front, when we have a list of ideas, and we just start bringing forward ordinances to council to change the density of this particular neighborhood, without having done that engagement, then there's going to be tons of pushback. If we go out in front of an ordinance and we say, here's a possibility, let's hear what the community has to say. If the builders for bicycle apartments had done a better job of that, perhaps the neighborhood complaints would have been less, and we might not have ever had an appeal that caused a delay on that project.
So I think considering that it sounds like little to no additional investment than what's already been budgeted in our overall budget, I'm inclined to support it.
Okay, I think we're ready for roll call. If you'd like to repeat the motion for us.
Sure. The motion is to approve initiating a housing action plan as presented. White?
Yes.
Coffee?
Yes.
Cousins?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Funk?
No.
Hill?
Yes.
It passes 5-1. Thank you. Next, that will take us to other business. Are there any items council members would like to discuss under other business?
Yeah, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I have something I'd like to discuss. So I've spoken with different council members about a 2011 resolution that I have concerns about. It actually has been a shared concern with even some staff. And so I'm asking for the council to discuss this resolution at the next council business meeting. The resolution is 2011-77, and it mandates the use of E-Verify by contractors and business entities contracting with the city of Yakima. And so I would like for this to be placed on the next agenda for council's discussion and consideration.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for to be looking at a resolution regarding E-Verify. And you made the motion? Who made the motion? I'm
I
sorry.
made the
You
motion.
made the motion, and Councilmember Hill seconded it. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Well, at this point in time, it would be just wonderful to add, if we can expect that staff will bring forward that resolution in the packet for the agenda and any other related documents.
The previous resolution?
Yes,
for
from
review,
2011.
yes, sure.
Yeah.
All right, and would you like to speak
Well,
to
that far predates me by about 7 years, and so I would just appreciate how it came to be, and if you can reconstruct, what the justification was, and what possibly, this might be too much in an ask, but I'm going to ask, what would be the ramification if we reversed it, or if we just revoked it, and where would that put us in terms of our relationship with federal authorities, if it affects it at all, and also how it may impact us. Could that translate into more small businesses competing that may not use E-Verify, or will that give us a larger breadth of applicants?
In a preliminary review, state and local governments do have an exemption, so we're not required to do this, to have the E-Verify ordinance. And in fact, in the state of Washington, only Lakewood, Kennewick, Camas, and Vancouver cities have a similar ordinance. Hoquiam had one, but at one point, but they repealed it in 2013. There's a few states that have, actually there's about maybe 8 states that have it. There's about 4 counties in Washington that have it. So I did check in with Sue Omby, our purchasing manager, who would be sort of most knowledgeable about the requirements for contracts with federal dollars. She did confirm that cities and state governments do have an exemption, and so and again, based on the few number of cities that have it as an ordinance, I personally haven't been able to find any problem if we would.
So you can't think of any significant negative impact of revoking or removing this ordinance?
I guess I can't predict what the current administration might do.
So your answer is no.
I can't predict anyone, but I don't know what the.
Well, I don't expect you to predict what someone else.
But given the landscape, again, with just I think 4 cities in the state having adopted this, I think we're okay.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Cousins.
Yeah, I just want to thank Councilmember Gutierrez for bringing this forward. I think it's really important that we look at removing any unnecessary red tape that we can. So.
Council members, any other comment? Hearing none?
This is just a motion to put it on the agenda, correct?
For discussion and education.
All right, if you'd like to repeat the motion, we'll have roll call.
There was discussion about E-Verify and a statement that would like this on the next agenda for council discussion and consideration. So.
Yeah,
that's right. We don't have.
I move to add resolution 2011-77 to the next business meeting on May 21st.
Second.
So we had a motion by Deputy Mayor, and then we had a second by Councilmember Hill.
Yes, thank you. Roll call.
Roll call.
Coffee?
Yes.
Cousins?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Funk?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
It's passing unanimously. Is there anything else? Yes, Councilmember Funk.
Well, as you all know, I am under a resolution of censure, and I sent an email to you all saying that I would like to have written clarification of basically just a list of meetings that I'm not allowed to go to and meetings that I am allowed to go to, and what restrictions there would be on my participation in meetings that I am allowed to go to. I thought that this would be an appropriate ask for Mr. Cutter. I directed it to Mr. Moore, but he said that it needed to be taken up at a council meeting. So my request is to put this on the agenda for the next meeting, at which time I would make a motion that we direct the ask for this clarification to Mr. Cutter and his department.
If I may, I think it
Is
was
there a s-
directed.
Is that a, was she
Is
made
there
a
a
motion?
second?
Yeah.
Was
That
that
was
a
a
motion?
There's a motion to put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Oh, because, okay, go ahead. Is there a second?
Second. I think it's a valid question.
Well, I was going to answer
okay.
it.
Okay. Okay, well, we could still, let's talk about it then.
You have to have it to discuss.
Discussion.
Yeah,
So is that a second?
that is a second for
Okay, we have a
discussion.
motion and a second. I would be happy to, with the permission.
Can you just speak to the motion?
Yeah, I
Would you
already
like to
did.
speak to your motion? Would you like to speak to your second?
Not at this time.
I think it was, because it was a council action, it would be something that the council would answer. I would be happy to attempt to answer your questions so that it doesn't have to wait and take another 2 weeks if you would like to have a response.
I really want a document.
Well, we could document it. It would be taken in document form here.
I made the motion. Clerk, I mean, do you have the motion that was read and approved? I think it said external and internal boards, which should be, when we met on January 2nd, we're all seated as a council, we voted on who would represent the council on external boards, and so whatever those are, plus if she's a chair of internal boards, we have neighborhood, community building, economic development, partnerships, and public safety. So
Well, I
that's
think
my
it-
understanding, but I mean, I think we should probably follow whatever the motion is, and if there's not clarity, go from there.
I think there can be clarity. The action taken by the council does not preclude Councilmember Funk from attending any open public meeting.
So what-
Action taken by the council says that you are removed from participation in all city council committee assignments and all non-city boards, committees, and commission assignments for a period of 6 months. So should you choose to attend any such meetings, you would not be able to participate as a council member. The resolution is silent on city council business, special or emergency meetings, including executive sessions. Council censure resolution does not preclude you from attending, participating, or voting at those meetings. If you would like that in writing, I would be happy to do that.
I definitely want that in writing, and there have been documents with lists of committees that I'm not supposed to be on that I'm not on anyway, and I think that needs to be clarified.
Well, that can be done if that is what you choose, but that is the clarification. You are not precluded from attending any open public meeting.
So that's easy enough to provide in writing. I'd want the same thing.
Yeah, I don't see there's any problem.
Excuse me?
I was just agreeing with you.
Oh, I
anybody,
thought I heard a profanity.
anybody
Sorry.
would want the same thing.
Well, we'll see that you receive that. Is there,
Can
do
you
we
repeat
need
the
to
motion?
have a vote?
There is a motion, so yes.
The motion is to put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Is that still necessary? Because we can get this done for you.
We have a second. I think we have to vote on it.
We do.
Madam Mayor.
Point of clarification, may I have the motion reread?
Yes, a motion to put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
To put it?
That was
But
the motion.
That was the motion.
So put
Sounds like a weak
it as,
motion.
as
Would you
in,
like-
as in
Do you
her,
wanna amend it so it's not it?
as, just to make it clear.
I want a document that says which meetings I am not allowed to go to and which meetings I am allowed to go to. And if I get that document in my hand and it's been approved by the whole council and everybody is satisfied with it, then it won't need to be discussed again. But procedurally, I think that what I'm supposed to be doing at this point in time is asking to have it on the agenda for the next meeting.
All right, then why don't you clarify your motion and say
Okay.
what it is?
I have already said several times that my ask here is to have this on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay. Clerk, can you interpret that to make the motion?
Sure. Thank
Okay.
you.
So can you read back your interpreted motion?
To bring,
Why can't it just be the resolution related to Councilmember Funk's? Councilmember Funk. There's only one resolution related
That
to her.
works. That will work. If she approves the amendment.
I move to amend the motion to clarify that it is the resolution related to Councilmember Funk.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Approved.
Okay, so that was for the amendment. Now we got to vote on the actual motion.
So, would you like to repeat the motion?
yes, is to bring back, to put on the agenda for the next meeting the resolution related to Councilmember Funk's censure.
And roll call, please.
Coffee,
Yes.
Cousins,
Yes.
Gutierrez,
Yes.
Funk,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Thank you. Is there anything else?
I have something. So if you get the document prior to that meeting, do we still need to discuss it?
I think we have officially put it on the agenda.
Okay.
So would you like to wait until then and get it?
Let's
Just trying to
not
help
make
you,
it
Kay.
complicated.
All right.
Okay. Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I move the council adjourn to a special council meeting on May 8th at 11 a.m. in the morning tomorrow at the convention center.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.